During the opening of the Warsaw Security Forum, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said the following. Poland understood quite quickly, not just because of its geography and history, but also because of its sober assessment, what modern Russia is. It quickly understood that one cannot skimp on security. Words are one thing, but actions are something else entirely. Tusk's government does not intend to buy missiles for the state-of-the-art American F-35 aircraft purchased during the previous government's term. The finance minister does not want to agree to the purchase of key armaments for the F-35, namely air-to-air missiles. These messages are radically contradictory. On the one hand, the Prime Minister declares that he will not skimp on security, and on the other hand, he is skimping on security. It seems paradoxical to buy the most modern aircraft, but without the most modern missiles. We are witnessing an unprecedented absurdity. Poland is spending huge amounts of money to buy modern aircraft, but for political reasons, it is probably not buying the missiles that are needed for these aircraft to do what they are supposed to do. These are missiles that would allow Polish F-35s to engage enemy aircraft at a distance of up to 180 kilometers. AIM-120D3 missiles, they must be included in the arsenal of weapons and missiles that will keep us safe, keep us out of the enemy's range, and at the same time allow us to destroy threats from a great distance. In April, the US State Department agreed to sell 400 such missiles for approximately $1.3 billion. This is a truly unique propaganda spectacle where the government boasts about the alleged modernization of the Polish army, while on the other hand blocking anything they can. This team could not block the purchase of F-35s, but it can still block the purchase of missiles to equip these modern air-to-air fighter jets. All because the Ministry of Finance ordered the Minister of Defense to repay the debt used to modernize the Polish Army's Armed Forces Fund directly from the Ministry of Defense's defense budget. It turns out that we will not have the missiles with which we could shoot down these Russian planes. This situation poses a major problem in terms of the Ministry of Defense's ability to make arms purchases and has a very negative impact on Polish national security. But that's not all, because, as revealed on Saturday by the head of the National Security Bureau, the national security strategy prepared by the Tusk government, which was not accepted by the previous president, Andrzej Duda, will also not be accepted by the current president, Karol Nawrocki. The national security strategy developed by the government did not take into account a whole series of comments addressed to the government by my predecessors in the National Security Bureau. They were not taken into account. This strategy does not respond to the challenges of the era. On the other hand, the security strategy that the current government expects to be accepted contains issues that are important to the current Prime Minister's allies in Brussels and Berlin. It talks about the role of humans in destroying the natural environment. It talks about opening up to green energy. And you can even read sentences that suggest that the future of Poland is basically ETS2. We simply cannot agree to this. It is difficult to imagine that Polish armaments will be subordinated to the EU's self-destructive climate policy. We are to build a strategy that will disarm us, make the army emission-free. Well, it might be emission-free, but it will also be unarmed. This is the logic of this incompetent government. Donald Tusk's security strategy lacks a reliable analysis of the threats to Poland, which was recently attacked by a swarm of Russian drones, and the Kremlin's recent numerous provocations against NATO countries. We must take into account the new phase of Russian aggression, not only against Ukraine, but also against European countries, because it was not only Poland that had airspace violations. The draft sent by the government also fails to emphasize the role of the Polish-American alliance. Instead, it focuses on getting close with Brussels and Berlin. The weaker Poland is, the stronger the drive, the greater the chances of Germany achieving ambitious projects regarding their participation in shaping the global map. Such are Germany's ambitions. They want to participate in the new global security architecture, not just the European one, and they are sending a clear signal that they do not envision Poland in this deal. Therefore, the Tusk government's plans to abandon the armament of American aircraft are hardly surprising. A new day, a new chapter in Moldova's history. In the parliamentary elections, the country clearly opted for integration with Europe rather than with Russia. We are heading in the best possible direction because for Moldova, Europe is the one correct path that would allow people to live normally. It was already clear last night, after half the votes had been counted, that the pro-Western PAS party would win the elections in Moldova. A few hours later, it turned out that not only had it won, but it had also secured an absolute majority, something that had seemed unlikely not long before. Looking from the outside, judging by the news I read this morning in the press and from our partners abroad, everyone is obviously pleased with this result and at the same time very surprised. I think that even the European Commission, which has been so open to Moldova, was very surprised. The PAS party has recently been criticised for its slow reforms, minor and major scandals in the government, but above all for the country's poor economic situation, rising prices and almost zero economic growth. We hope that now, finally, there will be changes, because everyone wants Moldova to be a good place to live, for us to have jobs, good salaries, and for people not to have to leave the country. The defeat of the largest pro-Western party in Moldova would have been a failure for the European Union, which is often criticised also here for doing too little to convince Moldovans to integrate with the West rather than with Putin's Russia. The elections have shown very clearly which direction the country wants to go in, regardless of any problems, and it is certainly not Moscow.
Russia has not achieved its objectives.
Russia has not achieved its goal. They spent a lot of money to destabilise us, but they lost. Polish President Karol Nawrocki was among those who congratulated her on her election victory. I congratulate the pro-Western forces on their victory in the parliamentary elections in Moldova. Poland continues to support Chisinau on its path to reform and European integration. I look forward to fruitful cooperation with President Maia Sandu. In 2022, Moldova obtained the status of a candidate country for the European Union, and 2 years later, it began formal accession negotiations. However, it is still unclear when it could become a member of the European Union, and many doubt that it will succeed. There are many problems to be solved, including the separatist region of Transnistria, where Russian soldiers are stationed. The citizens have once again placed their trust in the PAS party, and expectations towards the government are extremely high. Now there will be no reason to claim that it is impossible to fulfill promises. Regardless of any problems, the election showed a clear decline in support for parties appealing to nostalgia for the Soviet Union and Russia, and new generations of Moldovans feel connected to Western Europe.
Russia is not doing a lot of good things. It's really bad, and from my parents' experience that lived with Russia when they were little, and my grandma and my grandpa, as I've heard, it's not good with them. And I want to go with Europe because I have a lot of family that is in Germany, Italy.
A lot of young people started to go vote, me included. I voted for the first time, and I think we have a bright future ahead of us.
This electoral victory is an important step for Moldova towards the West, but it is definitely not the end of its problems. Post-communists are still a real political force here, and Russia is not giving up easily, hence the fears of possible unrest and attempts to destabilize the country by Putin's goons.
These are images from the Ukrainian attack on the combined heat and power plant and power station in Belgorod, Russia, less than 50 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The result? Half the city was left without power. The Ukrainian missiles over Russia are a response to the weekend attack by the Russians, when hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles fell on Sumy, Odessa, and above all, Kyiv. According to Ukrainian authorities, at least 4 people were killed and nearly 40 were injured. The death toll in Ukraine could have been much worse. This Protestant pastor speaks of a miracle. The missile fell right next to his house, but despite enormous damage, no one was hurt. This is part of the missile. This is my house. My children were here. Thank God we are all alive. The morning revealed the extent of the damage. My children were sleeping here, and the missile flew through. We are alive. Over 3.5 years into the Russian invasion, Ukraine may receive a very valuable weapon: the United States' consent to strike deep into Russian territory.
I want to go.
Yesterday, in an interview with Fox News, President Trump's special envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, spoke about this.
I think reading what he has said and reading what Vice President Vance has said, as well as Secretary Rubio, the answer is yes. Use the ability to hit deep. There are no such things as sanctuaries.
Keith Kellogg, pictured here meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the recent UN summit in New York, added that Ukraine is also seeking Tomahawk long-range missiles, which can destroy targets up to 1,600 kilometers away. This could change the course of the war, although the White House has yet to make a final decision. Tomahawks in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers pose a deadly threat to Russian military bases, the arms industry, airports, and ports. The approval of strikes deep inside Russia is further proof that President Trump is losing patience with Putin, calling Russia a paper tiger and claiming that Ukraine is capable of regaining all its territories, including Donbass and Crimea. I think on one hand, this is because of what President Trump knows, but on the other hand, it is also the work that we, the leaders of Central and Eastern European countries, including myself as the President of Poland, have been consistently doing, because this narrative is unambiguous. Kyiv's military reinforcement comes at a time when Russia has deliberately violated the airspace of NATO countries several times over the course of the last month.
The drone wave against Poland on the night of September 10 was a test not only for Poland but for all NATO. Russian jets violated Estonia's airspace, and the new drone incidents in northern Europe are another test for NATO as a whole. Russia is testing how far it can go.
Poland and the Baltic states are implementing a plan to build concrete bunkers and anti-drone networks around key energy facilities. We are witnessing Russian aggression. We are seeing acts of sabotage across Europe, so we must be ready. And we, in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland, are border countries for the whole of Europe. We expect our projects to be replicated in other countries. Polskie Sieci Elektroenergetyczne, Poland's primary electricity transmission system operator, plans to create its own armed security unit and use helicopters to secure the connection with Lithuania through the Suwałki Gap.